guys, it is that time of year again where I say that I normally am not this organized. I post this video like a few months later, but it is the time of year where we talk about all of the authors that I want to read from before I go to Rare next year. So if you guys don't know what Rare is, it's kind of like the UK/European version of a Polycon or Book Bonanza. It's a massive like romance author and reader event. That's literally what Rare stands for. And every year they alternate between having the event in London or Edinburgh in the UK. So for 2024, it's going to be Edinburgh across 2 days. And they also every year have one in a different European city. So like last year was Florence. I can't remember where 2024 is going to be, but I have a big list of authors that I would like to read from before I go to that event, and I do make this video every year. Do I ever do much about this TBR though? No, I do not. So I would like to change that this time around. I have also done this a little bit differently because this is the 10th anniversary of Rare, so there's over 300 authors attending, and that's a lot. And normally I go through every single author, I look them all up on Goodreads, and I decide if I want to read their books, but the list is in alphabetical order. So by the time I get to like the P's, not even the P's, by the time I get to the like H's, I'm running out of steam and I'm not researching them quite as intently as I was like the A's and the B's. So this year I've done it a little bit differently. I have just gone through, I've picked out all of the author names that I recognize. I have a list, a very small list of authors that I'm going to talk about first, which are ones that I've already read from. So I don't need to read from them to know that I'm already going to go see them at Rare, but I just want to let you know who those authors are. I'm very excited about some of them. Then I have my list of priority authors. Those are ones that were already on my radar or my TBR, or I own books from them. And then the last list, and the ones that I'm going to get to if I get time, I've seen a few books by them that are potentially interesting. I've heard people talk about them, but they're not like, if I don't get to them, I don't get to them. And recently over the last year or so, I've gotten a little bit better about reading more than one book at once, and I want to do that with Rare authors. I'm a little bit stuck at the minute because I'm working on a project throughout this month and also trying to read my core TBR alongside, but once this is done, I'm thinking that I always kind of want to have a Rare book ongoing to help me get through this stack. So getting into that list of authors, we will start with the ones that I've already read from, but I will be still seeing and taking books to have signed by them. The first one is of course Rebecca Yarros, the author of Fourth Wing. I met Rebecca Yarros at Rare this year, so I have already had my American copy of Fourth Wing signed, but I just got my Iron Flame pre-order and haven't read it yet. Do not spoil me. And I also will be getting the Waterstones edition that matches this one, that I will also be taking to be signed. You guys know who Rebecca Yarros is. I'm not going to give you a synopsis of Fourth Wing. We also have Danielle L. Jensen, who is the author of the Bridge Kingdom series. This is book 3 and I have yet to read it, but I've read books 1 and 2. I haven't had any books signed. I haven't met Danielle L. Jensen before, so I will be taking all of her books that I own to be signed. But I do want to read Stolen Songbird before I go, because this is the first book in, I think it's like a YA fantasy romance series from her that is, it's not like a retelling, but it is like kind of a take on the troll that lives under the bridge. Kind of like fairy tale, I believe. And this one is about a girl who's been bonded to the prince of the trolls and kind of has to face the misconceptions that people have about the trolls. The Bridge Kingdom is a series that is broken up into duologies, so this is the first book of the second duology. And in the first one, we are following a girl who has been raised along with her sisters by her father with the sole intent of murdering the king of the Bridge Kingdom. There's this peace treaty, and one of the clauses in the peace treaty is that when these girls come of age, one of them will be sent to marry the Bridge King, and our main character is selected, and she goes once again to fulfill this contract and to kill her husband, only to find out that maybe the Bridge King is not the bad guy after all, like perhaps it's her father. So I really like the first 2 books in this series. Excited to, I've had this for a while now, I really need to get to book 3. It's because it's the start of a new like mini story arc that's like halting my progress with it, because the first story arc in the first duology is wrapped up, and then I'd also like to get to this, because with this being potentially YA, I'm not sure if I'll enjoy it as much as this one. We also have an author that I don't actually own any books by, because I think all of her books that I've read have either been on KU or Prime Reading, and that is Penelope Douglas. I am so excited. I read Birthday Girl and I do not like age gaps. That one's an age gap romance between a girl and her ex-boyfriend's father. I'm not an age gap person, but Birthday Girl was hot. Okay, I liked it. And then I read Punk 57 and I do like a bully romance, so I really enjoyed that one. I just don't own either of them, so I don't know whether I'm going to buy those to have them signed. I definitely want to get something to have Penelope Douglas signed, but I'm also interested in the Devil Knight series. The first book in the series, I think, is about a girl who has done something to get this group of boys, or one of these boys, sent to prison, and he comes out of prison and he's exacting his revenge upon this girl. And then also, I think Credence Kelsey recommended to me, and that one is some sort of like step brother, step uncle kind of romance. But I'm a big fan of Penelope Douglas. I like the slightly taboo like nature of her romances. It's nothing like I would say extreme or anything. There's much darker romance out there, but I do love me a little, like a slight little taboo twist on a romance. So I am a big Penelope Douglas fan. I just need to get my hands on some physical copies of some of her books. And the last author for this section is Olivia Wildenstein, who is the author of the Kingdom of Crows series. I have read the first 2 books in this series. I have book 3. I actually picked that up at Rare this year and had Olivia sign it. I just can't get my hands on a paperback of book 2, so I'm hoping that Olivia actually puts up a pre-order form so that I can get the paperback from her, because it's unavailable on UK Amazon, and I don't know why, because with indie releases Amazon tend to print them, so it doesn't really make too much sense. She does also have other series. There's the Feather series that I would like to read, which is about a angel who's trying to become an archangel, and they take on like a crime lord and are trying to like fix them to ascend to the like archangel status. But obviously some romance ensues there, but this one in particular is a fae romance. There's also crow people and sorceresses in here, and our main character is a half fae that speaks to an oracle that tells her that if she finds 5 iron, I think, crows and frees them, then she will become the queen. So she takes this to mean that she will marry the prince that she's in love with and embarks upon this mission, but it's not as straightforward as that. It took me 40% to get into this book, but I actually really like this series and I really need to get to book 3. The next section we have are the authors that I have not read from, but I either own books by them or they are on my radar, so I would very much like to read from them before Rare rolls around. Some of these authors I do only have their books because of Rare, and I would like to prioritize them at some point. The first one of those is Tracy Lorraine. So Tracy Lorraine is a contemporary romance author. This one in particular, I have 3 Tracy Lorraine books. They were on the free table at the first Rare that I went to. But Tracy Lorraine writes the kind of like good girl, bad boy romance, which I am a sucker for. That's one of my favorite contemporary romance tropes. This one is part of the Madison Kings, or the first book in the Madison Kings University series. And I believe a girl turns up at this university and the boy wants to take revenge on her for something that's like happened in the past. I picked this up because all of the covers of this author's books are really cute, but that is My Conan Only by Susanna Nix, which is the first book in the King's Creamery series. This one is a series of contemporary romances where each of the male characters is part of this family that owns this ice cream shop or like ice cream company called the King's Creamery. This one is the best friend's little sister trope, so it's kind of like an off limits kind of romance. Susanna Nix also writes STEM romances, which I would also like to give a try, but this one, because I own it, is like my priority. I did really want to get to this in summer because this isn't, look at it, it's a summer romance. It's about some guys that run an ice cream parlor, but I missed my opportunity, so I really want to prioritize this for summer 2024. I'm not normally, I haven't read the Elsie Silver series yet, so I can't say this for sure, but like small town romances in general don't appeal to me. It's something about the cover of this one that I really like, and that is Always Mine by Laura Pavlov. This one is a best friends to lovers story, so it's kind of like really sweet. They've been best friends since they were very small children, and now like they're developing feelings for each other. Super simple setup, but there's just something about this one that really drew me to it, and I think I've heard like decent things about Laura Pavlov. We then have some fantasy romance, of course, because I am who I am, and the first one is The Bone Witch by Ivy Asher. I actually found this in my local bookstore, which is a mix of like new books and secondhand, and the reason why I picked it up is 1, because you just don't see indie fantasy romance in local bookshops. That's just not a thing, and 2, because Ivy Asher is an author that has co-written a werewolf series with Raven Kennedy. So I did an interview with Raven Kennedy a couple of years ago now, and she did like mention Ivy Asher. This one is about a family of witches, and the magic I think is hereditary, but it only passes on like when the person who has it dies. But the main character is not supposed to be the person that inherits the magic in her family, and a guy, after her grandma dies, a guy comes to her house and tells her that he believes that her kind are being hunted down down, and so the magic is passed to her. An author that I really want to prioritize before I go, but that I'm not sure if I'm gonna love, is J. Bree. So I have the first book in both of J. Bree's series here. I have The Crown of Oaths and Curses and also Broken Bonds. So I think that I may like J. Bree because I've heard that J. Bree writes really slow burn romances, but these books both have tropes that are not my favorite. So this one is a reverse harem or a why choose romance. I think it's like a bunch of fae warriors. And then this one is Fated Mates, which I don't mind if it is done as a slow burn. If it's kind of instant, like within the first 300 pages they've met and they know that they're mates and there's nothing that's ever, like, it just makes the relationship really low stakes in my opinion if the Fated Mates comes in really early and the plot isn't super high stakes. So this is the one that I think I will enjoy a little bit more. But the reason why I really want to prioritize J. Bree is because they have really nice event editions of their books that you can pre-order. They're pre-order only. So I want to read these to know if I enjoy them enough to pre-order the event editions before I go to Rare. One that I know absolutely nothing about. This one was sent to me by Aaron, and Aaron just said this is grade A reverse harem smut, and I'm not a reverse harem girly. It's just there's just too much going on. There's too many men to keep track of, and it's just a lot. And I would rather it was just a little bit more simple. So that one is Lola and the Millionaires by Catherine Moon. I believe that this is potentially an Omegaverse novel as well, which aside from it being poly, I don't know. Like, there's rules to the Omegaverse. I've never read an Omegaverse novel before. I do not know what I'm getting into. I don't know if I'm gonna like this, but we'll see. Like Aaron said that this is the one to read to find out if I like reverse harem, so we'll find out. There's also a couple of YA fantasy authors going to Rare. I believe that at least one of them, I can't remember which one, has also written contemporary romance, so I guess that's why they're going. But I have YA fantasy books from these authors. The first one I have is Defiance by CJ Redwine. This is one that I picked up, I think, at a charity shop 7 years ago minimum, because it was a YA fantasy, and YA fantasy at that time was a rare find in a charity shop. I don't know anything about this. It says trained by her father to be a warrior, tempted by the boy she cannot have, branded by her leader as a rebel, plunged into a world of danger and deception, Rachel must risk everything. The fate of her world depends on it. So pretty much the synopsis of every YA fantasy that ever YA'd. But I thought that this would be a good excuse for me to prioritize this, so if nothing else I can just get it off my TBR. And the other one, this is actually a series that I haven't heard the best things about, but it's one that I wanted to read once again back in the day, and now I feel like I'm a little bit too old for it, but I still want to give it a go. And that is Evelyn Skye. I'm pretty sure it is Evelyn Skye that also writes contemporary romance, but this one is a YA fantasy that is, I think it's like Russian inspired, and also has a series of trials, which is the Crown's Game. Yeah, it's not only Russia inspired, like it's set in St. Petersburg, and the Crown's Game is an ancient duel of magical skill. Once again, quite a basic YA fantasy plot. This one seems like it has potentially a little bit more to it than Defiance does, and once again, if nothing else, this will be an excuse for me to prioritize this, so if worse comes to worse, like I can just get it off my TBR. There are also a few authors in this priority list that I do not own books by, but I will have heard of them in the past or been interested in their books for like various reasons. The first one of those is Beck McMaster, and the book that I really want to read from Beck McMaster is A Promise of Darkness. This one is from back before fantasy romance was the massive thing that it is now. I was looking for Hades and Persephone retellings specifically, and this one came up at the top of a lot of lists, so I wanted to read it for a long time because of that. Because I don't own a physical copy, I own an ebook copy of it. I never prioritize it. Beck McMaster was actually supposed to be at Rare this year as well, but pulled out because of whatever, like personal reasons. So I'm hoping that that doesn't happen for 2024 and that I actually managed to get to this one. We also have Juliet Cross, who I believe was at Rare this year, but I didn't get around to reading her books. But Juliet Cross is I think is the series called the Stay a Spell series. The first book in it is Wolf Gone Wild, and it's kind of like cozy fantasy romance, like that cutesy paranormal romance, low stakes kind of vibe, humorous as well. That is all I know about it, but I'm not the biggest fan of cozy fantasy. I can read it now and again, so this can be my now and again, I guess. The last one for this list is one that I'm pretty sure is on my radar because one of my patrons has submitted it for the Inner Circle monthly book draw, and that is the Book of Azrael by Amber Vinoco. This is the first book in the Gods and Monsters series. It has a pretty complicated fantasy plot. It involves gods, it involves somebody who gave up her life to save her sister like 1,000 years ago and has been in service to this monster since then. Gods like return into the realm of the living for whatever reasons. I know that it's dark. I don't know how dark it is, but it has definitely piqued my interest, and I hope that I can get to this one before the event. And then moving on to the authors that have piqued my interest. They're either relatively well known within like, I guess, contemporary romance or genres of romance that I don't read as much of, but like because they're relatively well known, I want to give them a try, or they are fantasy romance authors that I've never heard of, but they have a book that sounds a little bit interesting to me. I think I'm going to run through the fantasy first and then go through all of like the mainly contemporary, but all of these genres that are fantasy romance. The first one is Claire Sager. Now I'm gonna say that the majority of the fantasy romance ones I've put on here as like low priority, but I'm potentially interested in. The majority of them are fae romances. I am who I am, I like what I like, and it's fae, it's fae men. The first one is Claire Sager. The book I'd like to read by Claire Sager is A Case of Iron. This is the first book of the Shadows of Tenebrous Court, and this is about a penniless noblewoman that takes the opportunity of a lifetime to save herself from ruin, and she has to spy on a fae lord. This one is not necessarily fae, but it could be. The synopsis is very vague, but it is Untainted by Lillian T. James, which is the first book in the Crystal Island series. This one is about a woman who finds a man tailing the crown prince, so she confronts him about it, and he tells her that she possesses a power that he vitally needs and asks her to go with him, so she has to decide whether to leave her home behind to embark on this adventure. I'm assuming he has like a really good incentive, or whether she should stay put. I'm guessing she goes with him though. It's mainly the cover of this one that's drawn me in, but it is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Eriyu. This one follows a young woman who hears a prophecy that she's destined to fall for a star, but it will kill them both, and then one comes to Earth to wreak havoc, which forces her to flee to a neighboring country, where she is then forced to fight for that neighboring country's, like an enemy country's army. Another fae one is Curse of Shadows and Thorns by LJ Andrews. This one is following a girl whose family stole the crown from the fae like hundreds or thousands of years ago, and so the following rulers, the following members of this family are dedicated to keeping hold of the crown. However, the main character is not about that life anymore. Like she just wants to have fun. She doesn't want all this responsibility. The crown puts a stop to this when they start marriage negotiations for her, so she's given to this guy who's like her dowry negotiator, and after a coup they are forced to flee together, where this guy that she's fled with has potentially more secrets than anybody else when it comes to this plot. For a witchy one, we have The Unmarked Witch by Miranda Lynn. This one is set in a world where witches are marked to represent their power, like it's a representative of their strength, and our main character is actually insanely powerful but not marked. Her grandmother was murdered by the king, and she's trying to like navigate this society which allows witches to be murdered while also navigating like the power that she has. One that I hadn't heard of until I was doing the research for this video, but has now been nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards in the romantasy category, is A Court This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark. Now this one is dealing with gods and about a girl who is left for dead by a ruthless mercenary. I am a little bit nervous about this one because the synopsis is written in first person, and just when that happens it never bodes well for me. I never end up enjoying the book, but now that it has been nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award as well, I feel like I should definitely give it a go. One that I feel like I've heard of, but I don't know where from, I don't know whether it was like past rare research or whether I've just seen it around, is The Witch Collector, which is the first book in the Witch Walker series by Charissa Weeks. And this one is set in a world where every harvest moon the Witch Collector comes in and takes, I'm assuming, a witch to take to the Frost King, and our main character has been passed up every day. Like they never come to collect her, but she has one goal in life, which is to be taken to the Frost King so that she can kill him. We do have one author attending that I associate with YA fantasy more than fantasy romance or anything, so I put them on here because I just thought it was interesting they were attending, and that is Melissa Marr, which is the author of the Wicked Lovely series. That is a fae, probably fantasy romance-esque, back from like what I think was published like I think pre-2015, and I did have one of the books in the series, but it wasn't the first one, so I unhauled it. This is very much one, if I get time, I will give it a go, but it's not a massive priority because I just feel like my window of opportunity on that series has passed at this point. We have Eliza Reign, who has definitely been on a rare list before. Eliza Reign writes a ton of fantasy romance, including like stuff inspired by Hades. There's other like mythological stuff. If I'm giving Eliza Reign a go, I'm tempted to go for the Shadowbound Queen series, which is Court of Ravens and Ruin. And this is obviously because it's an enemies to lovers, they're bound in marriage, and one of them's a dark fae prince. So I mean, sign me the fuck up, am I right? And then to wrap up the fantasy section, there are two paranormal authors that are like super hyped, like big paranormal authors back in the day. I don't know if I'm going to read from them because I don't read paranormal romance like this, but I'm tempted to because of who they are. The first one is Kelly Armstrong, who I believe wrote, was it like the Otherworld series? I know that she wrote like a werewolf series. I think the first book is Bitten, that I remember seeing everywhere. And I'm talking like back in the day. And then I think that she also has a witchy series, the first book being The Summoning. And then the other one is Patricia Briggs, who is the author of the Mercy Thompson series. This kind of paranormal romance is definitely not my thing most of the time. I would be tempted to give the first book a go though. And I know y'all are going to tell me to read it anyway because you do that, but like trust me, paranormal romance, I just don't like it like that. So I'm not sure that necessarily like these authors are for me, but I thought that they were worth noting. And if I came across the first book in their series in a charity shop, I would potentially pick it up and give it a try, just in case. There's like a 2% chance I would love it, but just in case. And then circling back around to everything that isn't fantasy romance, first up we have Alyssa Cole, which is really exciting. Alyssa Cole is an author that I've heard a lot about before I even read romance, and I was watching channels of people who read a little bit more contemporary and romance. The main series that I remember everybody talking about and praising from Alyssa Cole was the Reluctant Royal series, which I think is they look like historical romances, but they're actually like contemporary romances, potentially taking some of those tropes from historical and royal romances. I've heard very good things about that, but I gotta say, like, I'm kind of interested in Alyssa Cole's thrillers, which I was wondering if they were romantic suspense, and they're actually not. So like the most popular one is When No One Is Watching, which is a thriller, and it doesn't look like it's a romantic suspense at all. So I've heard really good things about Alyssa Cole in general, so I'm very tempted to give her a read. I just don't know if she's for me because the genres that she writes are not ones that I typically like love. Gianna Darling is also going to be attending. I don't know if Gianna Darling exclusively writes motorcycle romance, but I have been recommended Lessons in Corruption to like a starting point, which is a motorcycle club. Something I'm not familiar with, not comfortable with, never read a motorcycle club romance in my life, but if I was going to, it feels like this one would be a good one to start with. One that should be in my priority list, but it's not because Aaron like ruined it for me before I even read it, is All the Feels by Olivia Dade. This one is the sequel to Spoiler Alert. I don't have Spoiler Alert, I only have this one because it was an Afterlight book, and Olivia Dade writes plus size romances, but just something that Aaron said about what the main love interest compares the main character to. Every time I think about Olivia Dade, I just think about that, so I'm not sure if I want to read this anymore, but I might give it a try because I do own it. Once again, like with the YA fantasy I have, it would be good just to give it a go and get it off my shelves. So potentially like I will use this as an excuse to prioritize this, so that if I don't like it because of the reasons that Aaron doesn't like it, it's gone out of my sight and I don't need to think about that every time I see this book. It's nothing like super problematic or anything, and obviously I don't know the context of it within the book, but it's just, you know, when somebody says something and then that's the only thing you can think about, that's what's happened with me in that book. Every time I think about that book, all I can think about is what Aaron said about it. I feel like I want to read from this author, one because they're popular, so I want to give them a try, but the main reason I think is because their covers, I just really like them, and that is Katharina Mora. So I guess like Katharina Mora's most popular book is The Wrong Bride, which is the first book in the Windsor series. They are billionaire romances, and the thing that puts me off Katharina Mora is that all of them are marriage books, it seems. Like I flicked through quickly, but they all seem to center around marriage, which depending on how it's done, arranged marriage, forced marriage is not usually my favorite. But The Wrong Bride in particular is about a girl whose sister is supposed to marry this billionaire and she doesn't show up. So I don't know why, but the main character ends up marrying him instead, and the billionaire romances. I don't know if there's any crime elements, no, because he's a billionaire media mogul, so I think it's like straight up billionaires. I don't think I've read a billionaire romance. This could be my first. They have good ratings. Katharina Mora is a popular author, so I feel like with everything else, like if I'm gonna read a billionaire romance, might as well start with this one. And then the last contemporary that I have is from an author that I once again feel is a pretty popular one, that is a genre that I don't typically read from, and that is A. Zavarelli. The book that I would read from A. Zavarelli is Crow, which is the first book in the Boston Underworld series. This one is a crime or like mafia romance, and I have read mafia or like crime family romance before. I've read the first 1.5 books in Sophie Lark's series, only half because I'm currently reading it, but I'm reading it really slowly. I just need to prioritize that and actually get it off my currently reading. And I do like those books, but mainly because of Sophie Lark's writing more than anything. Like crime or mafia romance isn't a special interest of mine or anything. So this is once again like, because A. Zavarelli is a pretty popular author, I feel like if I was gonna read a book from this genre, this is the one that I would go with. So those are all of the authors that I would like to read before Rare 2024. Am I going to? Probably not. Let's be realistic. I don't normally make the biggest dent in this list, and also there's I think 32 authors here, which is more than 2 per month. Some of these are the first books in series. I'm not interested in starting a bunch of series and not finishing them, even though I do it all the time. So I would like to prioritize like continuing series when I start them. But potentially, hypothetically, if I made a significant dent in this list, I would potentially, hypothetically, go back to the list of authors, do a little bit more research and select like a new list of authors to go from, because this is not an exhaustive list. This was not like I normally do, me going through every single author and picking out the ones that sound the most interesting. This was just at a glance, some random selection, random Googling, looking at the Rare document that has like them all split into subgenre. So this isn't the most exhaustive like list that I could have made, but I feel like it's ample. Like I feel like the way that I've done it and still come out with 32 authors is still more than I'm going to get to, so I do feel like it's enough. So let me know if any of these authors are ones that you've enjoyed, if there's any that I should prioritize, any you think I'll enjoy, especially if there's any you think I won't enjoy. That would be important to know because it will save me some time. But aside from that, guys, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish Kindle website, the Etsy for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.